Thank you. Welcome back for the reconvened full council meeting. We're now going into extra time, and if we're not finished by 3:30, we're going to penalties. So, just be warned. Thankfully, I don't need to repeat the things unless anybody needs the good practice guidance refreshed, do we? No, right. Well, in view of the fact that we've got particularly one very important report to deal with, I was going to change the order in which we're taking the meeting. So we're going to go into the exempt items first, and then we'll do the other items. So, Councillor Dryburgh, you look like you want to say something?
No, Chair, it's just that if we're going to exempt it, we might have to go in those on Teams, we'll have to go into the other. Exactly,
I was just going to make that clear. And actually, there's two exempt invites, and it is bizarrely the second one that we're doing first. So there we go. So members asked to consider adoption of resolution to exclude the public from the meeting in terms of section 50A(4) and paragraphs 9 and 13 of part 1 of schedule 7A of the Local Government Scotland Act 1973 in relation to item 29 and in relation to urgent item 29A. Paragraphs 6, 8 and 9 of Part 1 of Schedule 7A of the Local Government Scotland Act 1973. Are we happy to do that? Thank you. So now Members, move on to item 21, notice of motion, Pride, report by Director Communities. Before moving to the detail of the report, given its subject matter, can we first agree to remove delegation from the Communities Committee so that we may discuss it? Agreed. Members are asked to consider the notice of motion by Councillor Tracy Little, seconded by Councillor Katie Hagman. The notice of motion is attached at the appendix of this report. Mark Malloy, Service Manager Young People, and Lindsay Little, Development Officer Poverty and Inequalities, are available on Teams to assist members with any questions. Councillors Little and Hagman, please propose and second your motion, after which I shall invite contributions and questions from other members. Bearing in mind that we've got 5 minutes to propose and 2 minutes to second. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. And thank you, members, for considering this motion, and thank you to Lindsay and Mark for the covering report. And hold on to your hats, I'm passionate about this one as well. As it was in my motion yesterday, though, regarding child hunger, you don't have to be directly affected by an issue personally to be passionate about the suffering of others and try to do all within your power to alleviate that suffering. We have an element of power here to be able to make a difference. Compassion is a human condition. Human rights are basic rights that belong to us all simply because we're human. So I suppose I am personally affected. We all are. Human rights embody key values in our society such as fairness, dignity, equality, and respect. They are important means of protection for all of us, especially those who may face abuse, neglect, and isolation. Most importantly, these rights give us power, enable us to speak up and to challenge. While laws and attitude towards LGBT community have improved over the years, discrimination is still rampant and can rear up in subtle ways. The recent stats on the motion regarding the rise of hate crime against LGBT people are shocking, heartbreaking, and just really, it takes my breath away that this is still going on in 2023. It takes time to overcome centuries of discrimination and prejudice, but we mustn't miss a single second of that time. We must use it productively until we are all viewed and respected as the equals we are. In the words of the Universal Declaration of, if the words of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that we're all born free and equal, are to mean anything at all, if everyone is going to have the chance to thrive, then we have to be able to accommodate all kinds of diversity, or better still, celebrate it. We think our region is inclusive, do we? I thought we were being better here, but there was a Pride representation at the Walking Part of Good Neighbours parade a couple of weeks ago who received abuse and threats as they went round while they were participating in a local event that's supposed to be for absolutely the whole community. Now, I'm horrified and ashamed that this type of bigotry still resides in our region. We get to choose to treat all with dignity, compassion and acceptance, or ignorantly adhere to the short-sighted, limited societal views that keep people hidden and afraid. Now, the Council is a service provider and along with the NHS are the largest local employers in D&G, working closely with strategic partners and other local organisations. Now, this puts us in an ideal position to play a significant role in leading the way, ensuring everyone in society has opportunities available to them, is treated fairly and is made to feel like they belong. Now, the Progress Pride flag isn't simply a flag. It's a message to everyone that Dumfries and Galloway Council value every single member in this region. Beyond the gesture's symbolic value, raising the Progress Pride flag reflects the values of pride, tolerance and harmony that this council strives to promote. It's a message to all of our families, all of our friends, our neighbours, our residents, visitors, and those who have yet to be convinced that everyone is equal, that bigotry and prejudice has no home here in our beautiful region. But most importantly, it can make a genuine difference to lives. It helps enable people who are LGBT feel accepted and included, and that matters deeply. So thank you, members. I hope you will all wholeheartedly and unanimously support this motion today. I practically challenge anyone to challenge it. and prove that we are an elected council who proudly represent, support and protect every single one of our constituents. And there are no exceptions. Thank you, members.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell, are you going to second the motion? Is that?
Yeah,
Is
thanks,
Councillor Hagman
convener.
No, Councillor Hagman's here.
I think
she's here.
I'm
That's
here.
okay.
I've managed.
Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, convener. I'm so pleased to be able to second this motion. So I'm really glad that the timing has worked out. Just to say that I am a proud member of the LGBT community. My sister, when she was alive, and she is not alive anymore, was a proud member of the LGBT community as well. And this is personal for me, absolutely. But it's actually, I want to speak in terms of the UN independent expert. I appreciate it. I've only got 2 minutes. Our time is really valuable. But I would urge absolutely every single member of Dumfries and Galloway Council to read that mission statement. And I will resend it if I may. Well, I'll use the email service because I think it's so utterly important. I don't have time to say all the many, many things that I want to say regarding this, but just a few of the statements that have been said. There's expressed concern at the levels of misinformation feeding political, social and legislative debates around the legal recognition of gender identity. Abusive rhetoric by politicians, and that is all of us in this room because we are all politicians. Abusive rhetoric by politicians is trickling down and facilitating increasingly abusive and hateful speech in social media, which in turn seems to be spurring rapid increase in the frequency of bias-motivated incidents of harassment, threats and violence, including rampant surges of hate crimes. This is a UN independent experts essentially calling all of us as politicians out in regards to this. And just one final point. Non-government organisations, NGOs across the UK have highlighted that there's been an increase by 76% of hate crimes towards trans persons in the last 3 months alone. The situation out there, and I'm talking about the wider public, is frankly dangerous for many in our community. So I think it's absolutely on us all to make sure that we, take this forward. And I would, urge everybody to read this. I'll stop there because I appreciate time, but thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to say just these few important stats. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Driver.
Thanks very much, convener. And as I say this, I want you to imagine me as a different gender, a short or a smaller person than myself, with mousy hair, who used to be a prison governor. All right, so this is from Councillor Linda Dorward. As an out and proud member of the LGBTQ+ community, I am more than happy to support this motion, and I note the statements by the UN and the then Chief Constable of Police Scotland concerning hate crimes against the LGBTQ+ community worldwide and in Scotland, and the admission of institutional racism, sexism and discrimination in Police Scotland respectively. The motion calls for local action in respect of these public acknowledgements, which again, we as a group support. However, I would also wish to propose an amendment in that I believe it's also incumbent on this council to ensure we are regarded as a leader in the public sector equality duty as per the Equality Act 2010. It's easy to point to shortcomings in other public sector organisations, but I would suggest we also need to look critically at ourselves as well. On the 7th of December 2021, a report was provided to the Communities Committee entitled the LGBT Charter Youth Work Service. This report acknowledged the award of the silver level LGBT Youth Charter to the Youth Work Service and proposed agreement to the next step, which included at 3.14 all secondary schools within our region having the opportunity to work towards the LGBT Youth Charter. 3.15, discussions taking place about our council going through the LGBT Charter of organisations led by the Health and Wellbeing Group. And these next steps were agreed as per 2.2 of the recommendations in the report. So the amendment would be, if Tracy and Katie was happy with it, with reference to the Community Committee on the 7th of December 2021 paper LGBT Charter Youth Work Service, this Council receives an update via the Communities Committee as to progress and any outstanding issues are as per agreed next step reference items 3.14 and 3.15. And just as an addition, Chair, and I'm going to say it again, the Armed Forces champion within the Council support for the LGBT community, there is a group called Fighting with Pride, and they are an armed forces group who look after the LGBT community within the armed forces. And I fully support what they're trying to do within that, because those of the LGBTQ in the armed forces have had several levels of detriment aimed at them because of their demographic. So I fully support this, but I would hope that Katie and Tracy would allow that additional thing to make sure that that community's report comes back to the Communities Committee.
Thank you, Tracy.
I'm happy to take that on. I had spoken, this is not left field, had spoken with Councillor Dorward about this previously, and and I'm also delighted to hear from Archie about that progression within the armed forces. Really delighted to hear that. But no, I'm happy to include that, and I'm sure Councillor Hagman, if she's still on, will probably be the same, but if you want to cut to her.
Yep. Absolutely, Convener. No issues with that whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Convener. I'm not part of the LGBTQ+ community, but I wholeheartedly embrace this motion today with the addition as well. We do have to be a council that is open and loving to everybody, and we need to be a region that is as well. So I'm very happy to support your motion today and to assist going forward in any of the work that needs to be done.
Councillor Hislop.
Chair, just to echo the words that have been said before, I think there is a view that some people out there still don't see the relevance of treating everybody fairly. Doesn't matter any of the diversity issues. There's one question I would like to ask, because I didn't understand what the Progress Pride flag was, and I had a look at it, and there was a wee bit in it that sort of says it splits the LGBT community, because some like it, some don't, and there have been issues with that. Are we causing an issue here, or is it accepted by everybody? And like you say, there's misinformation out there. Is that misinformation I've got off the internet?
Councillor Little.
There's division within every community and within everything. There totally is. I can't speak for that. I really can't. Maybe Councillor Hagman can. I think it is. It says it within itself. The progress, it includes far more. I think any division, any dislike of that is perhaps marginalised separate groups within. Dividing separate groups within. But the flag encompasses far more of the LGBT community than just. So it has been designed to incorporate as much as possible. So if Councillor Hagman wants to come in and add to that, I'm happy to.
Councillor Hagman, do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, what I would say is, in terms of that flag, it is supported by organisations such as Equality Scotland and other nationally recognised organisations. So I would say, and I would agree with Councillor Little, that there is absolutely your division across every single group, well, people across the planet, but certainly I think taking our lead from leading national organisations which support this, I think would be our basis for going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dennerley.
Thanks, Chair. I really do appreciate this matter being raised in regards to the LGBT community, and that includes diversity and various different backgrounds. So I definitely do support that wholeheartedly, and I would also like to consider other minorities as well, including disability, race, ethnics and so on. And it's to remember everybody here should be treated equally despite your background or your beliefs and so on. So yeah, it's just to note that we support all various minority groups and treat everybody as equal as we do, or as we should, and I'm more than happy to support that motion. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Dougie Campbell.
Thanks, convener. Just want to fully support the motion, and also to thank Tracy, Katie and Linda for their input. They all spoke with passion, and it was very, very powerful. I think I've spoken before about racism in relation to refugees, and when it comes to even casual homophobia or transphobia, where it's a joke or an off-the-cuff comment, I think it's behoving us to always challenge that, because that's where it starts. It starts with supposed humour, but then it builds up and builds up. And there's definitely, without a doubt, both nationally and internationally, a really worrying trend in terms of intolerance to people of different sexuality, race, religion, whatever it is. So, yeah, just to fully support the motion, congratulate Tracy, Katie and Linda, and I'll leave it at that. Thanks very much.
Leader.
Just very briefly, and it's maybe just a bit of housekeeping as we did yesterday. The motion says Council asks that the Chief Executive and Leader of Dumfries and Galloway, and I think we determined with a couple of motions yesterday that they were more in the political realm and maybe should just come from me rather than the Chief.
Happy with that,
Yeah.
Leader. Happy with that. And I also wanted to say that the council have been very good. I've asked the past 6 years when I've been a councillor, and it just takes one little EMES or one little phone call to have the pride flag up. There is never, unless it clashes. What I've had, I think I had the trans flag up at one point and it clashed with another date, and it was to be up for a week, and they just took it down for that one day and then put it straight back up again. There is always that support, and I'm always very, very appreciative of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. So we're happy to move on with unanimous support of the motion with the additions. Vlad, have you got wording for the additions, or perhaps Councillor Driver can share it with us?
Thank you, Convener. So I'll just read out the addition with reference to the Communities Committee on the 7th of December 2021, paper LGBT Chartered Youth Work Service. This Council receives an update via the Communities Committee as to progress and any outstanding issues as per agreed next steps, reference items 314 and 315.
Thank you, Vlad. So now move on to item 22, notice of motion, further education courses availability, report by Director, Skills, Education and Learning. Before moving to the detail of the report, given its subject matter, can we first agree to remove delegation from Education and Learning Committee? Thank you. Members are asked to consider the notice of motion proposed by Councillor Willie Scobie and seconded by Councillor Dougie Campbell. The notice of motion is attached at the appendix to the report. Jim Brown, Chief Education Officer, is available on Teams to assist members with any questions. Councillors Scobie and Campbell, please propose and second your motion, after which I shall invite contributions and comments. And once again, Councillor Scobie, you have 5 minutes.
I get 5 for yesterday, Chair. I hope you're not ticking. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me this motion. I think I've got the tail end to this one, but I think I would start by saying the students, when I met with them just recently, they said, like, it seems to them that when Dumfries sneezes, then Stranraer gets the flu, and there is no doubt that the 10% reduction to the funding has had an adverse effect. But why should it be that the Stranraer campus should have to bear the brunt of these cuts? It really highlights the inequity and the inequality the action being taken has had on the Stranraer students at the Stranraer campus. Some 18 students had registered for the NC art course, and 8 or 9 students had gone on from the NC course of this year and registered for the campus. But they were told on registering that those courses weren't going ahead because of the cuts. The art courses was ideal for the very much needed kids with autism and so forth. And it's a huge loss to the area. So when Tracy and others were talking about human rights, equalities and everything else, and sometimes this covers that part as well. I believe that and hold to the principles that everybody should be given the opportunity to reach their maximum potential, no matter where they come from, but not if you happen to live in Stranraer or other parts of Dumfries and Galloway. That denies some 18 in the NC and 8 or 9 in students in the HNC when they're being told that their courses can no longer run. And then they're offered to register in Dumfries. This is just impractical, if not least to say that they just can't get there for social and economic reasons. These are some single parents with young children at school, and you can imagine the inconvenience this causes. They're away from the early hours in the morning to 7 o'clock at night, if at all they can get back for that time. So it causes a great deal of inconvenience. It's also the profile, age profile of some of the other students, and it's just, again, impractical for them even to try to get to Dumfries, which is, as we all know, 75 miles away. That's why I've brought in the second part. So the first part is about inequality and inequity, and the second part is about the college. And asking, indeed, that the council writes to the college or even meet with them just to consider this course and how they can deliver it. I've read Jim's report, and I welcome the report, particularly in 3.1. Dumfries and Galloway College are a valued partner with the council, specifically within the Community Planning Partnership, the Local Employability and Skills Partnership, and the Young Persons Guarantee Group. And really, we got to emphasise that with the college. And indeed, I spoke to the deputy principal and the principal, and they were saying that if we work with the education department, then there are ways that they can deliver this. So that's my second part. The second part is to do with the reduction and how the colleges, rural colleges, are set aside, or we get a really raw deal when it comes to the settlement, and 10% reduction has a greater impact on rural colleges, and it even has a bigger impact if you're further out from the main college. So we do need to get the support of all the South of Scotland MSPs to be raising this in at Holyrood and with the Scottish Government, highlighting the inequality and the inequity of the services when they do bring about these cuts. I'm pleased to see that it has the support of the SNP when Ben Dasper put it on to social media, the motion. So I'm pleased to see that the SNP are getting behind this. But I would hope that it would be agreed unanimously. I don't think that we can afford, or we would want to see, and the earlier motion there on pride talked about the human rights. But let me read you the definition of inequalities as we have defined it as a council. A person is affected by inequalities when they are subject to treatment or denied access to resources, just what's happening in Stranraer, opportunities or services that are available to others based on factors such as their race, gender, sexuality, economic status, or other characteristics. And we've heard from Tracy on some of these other characteristics. I would hope that this motion will be agreed unanimously, that we will sit down with the college and see how we can bring about this course in Stranraer for the 18 young students, some of them on the autistic spectrum who need that extra support, and for the ones who have gone through their NC course to further develop their skills to HNC levels. So I would hope that we would unanimously agree. And I heard the leader talk there. I would hope that there would be the leader that writes to the education minister, just drawing attention to the detrimental effect that the cuts have, particularly to the more rural parts like Stranraer and Dumfries and Galloway. I so move, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Dougie Campbell, I'm afraid Councillor Scobie's used up a minute of your time.
That's all right. I shall be much quicker, convener. Thank you. Yeah, fully support the motion. And Willie was speaking there about opportunity, and I would describe it as a poverty of opportunity in the more remote parts of our region. And just to refer back to the 10,000 Voices report yesterday, I noted on that across the region, 55% of our young people don't plan to stay in Dumfries and Galloway. And then when I looked at Willie's ward, Ward 1, that figure is actually 66%, 11% higher than the regional average. And the three top reasons for wanting to leave the region were study, travel and work. I won't go beyond their convener because I think Willie's articulated it very well, but I second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Now open to comment and discussion. Councillor Juste.
Thanks, convener. Councillor Campbell just commented on something I was going to raise there about the 10,000 voices, but I've still got more to go. I completely support this motion. I think when we're trying to develop Stranraer as an artist town and looking at the George Hotel, what's going on there, the college pulling these courses just flies in the face of what we're doing and what we're trying to do in Stranraer. And I think that we really need to have a serious chat with them. And if it's funding, we really need to be taking that to the Scottish Government. And I'd like to see that Finlay Carson's actually yesterday invited the Minister for Education down to Stranraer to talk to us, just to put that on the record for Councillor Scobie. I fully endorse the motion. It needs to happen. We need to have a better deal in the West. I went to Dumfries and Galloway College. I've done the bus journey at just before 6 o'clock in the morning and got back at 7. And yeah, that's 3 days a week, but that's difficult when you're working or if you're having to do other things. And I didn't have kids. If you've got kids or whatever, that's not happening. So we just need to get this sorted. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jameson, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I welcome this. I think it's an excellent motion and I would support it. I'd also commend the Education and Learning Directorate who have worked really hard with the local colleges to try and introduce courses into the school. I would also add that it's not just students getting to the college, but when I think of things like modern apprenticeships, it's really difficult for the young people to get out onto the wherever, whether it's a farm or a forest or whatever in rural communities. So I fully support the need to lobby government to enhance, to realise that the unfairness in funding for rural areas, because it's very costly for a college to run in a rural constituent and also for the students, as I say, to get to college and to get to their workplaces. And as we see, modern apprenticeships is a great way forward for young people, but there's a lot of barriers in the way, particularly in rural areas. So I fully support the motion and the work that the education and the colleges are doing just now. And I can only say, hopefully, we can push it forward.
Thank you. Councillor Drybrough.
Yeah, thanks, convener. Full support, and as my group does this coming forward, I think everybody's life chances improves with better education, and the better and closer we can get that education to them, the more opportunities that those young people, and in many cases working age people, can actually have as well. So fully support this motion, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thanks. Convener, and yeah, absolutely support this, and I think there's maybe other opportunities to push this as well. I'm thinking particularly of the Regional Economic Partnership where the college is represented as our Skills Development Scotland, and I know there's a quality issue in terms of access opportunity and being able to deliver courses in Stranraer and other areas, but I think even seeing the whites of the eyes of those involved in that particular body and using that wider partnership leverage to actually get that message across to whoever can support us in delivering what our shared outcomes are. I'm just wondering, Lorna's playing a bit of a dual role today, but I'm wondering if she could maybe speak to that, because she does have an intimate knowledge of the rep, and maybe there is an opportunity there through the representatives and also the leader as well, who sits on that as well. So I'm just wondering if Lorna could add to that through the rep channel. Thank you.
Would you like to add something, Lorna?
Thanks, Councillor Thompson. Yeah, I think there's opportunity there. We also have other engagement with the college as well, with the rep as well. So I think taking every opportunity, if members are so minded to agree the motion today, then we could take those opportunities and bring forward. And obviously the Withers review that's just been published that government will consider as well gives some further power to potentially to colleges in terms of agreeing their curriculum and their funding. So the opportunities are there, I think, to give support to some of those flexibilities to support education in the region as well.
Councillor Driver, just what about clarity?
Thanks for that answer, Lorna. You just remind me of someone. Didn't Borderlands give some funding to the 2 colleges as well to have a look at opportunity? Or am I thinking South of Scotland Enterprise?
The funding that was provided to both colleges here and in Scottish Borders was from the predecessor to SOS, so it was the partnership there as well. But members will be aware that there is money indicated mid-deal for skills investment in the region as well, so it'll be important that that goes to support the ambition of the council and the college for education in the region.
Thank you. Happy, Stephen. Go on to Councillor Scobie again.
Yeah, Chair, I'm delighted with the response. I'll put aside the negative on chat, but delighted with the response from members and also from Lorna that we could look at that through other sources. Just for the record, when Councillor Disty referred to one of the MSPs, I know as well that Councillor, or rather MSP Colin Smythe, has also is intending to write to the Education Minister. So we are getting the support. We're still to hear from other MSPs. But if we need that level of support from our MSPs to be raising this in the House. But I'm delighted with the response for the elected members and Lorna for the officials. And if we can get this replaced. But it's, as George Jimison, not just the arts, it's other courses. I'm hearing that it's mechanics as well. So it's this whole issue of it being a wing of or a campus to the main college. We've got to make sure that we can deliver as many courses as possible, and we need to be doing that as soon as possible for the incoming year. So I'm delighted with the response and thank my seconder as well.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. I'm detecting we've got unanimous agreement for this motion. Thank you. Motion's agreed. I move on to item 23, notice of motion, formal recognition for Dr. Flora Murray, report by Director of Communities. Are we happy to remove delegation from the Communities Committee? Thank you. Members are asked to consider the notice of motion by Councillor Linda Dorward, seconded by Councillor Caroline Wilson. The notice of motion is attached at appendix to this report. Mark Malloy, Service Manager, Young People, and Lindsay Little, Development Officer, Poverty and Inequalities, are available on Microsoft Teams to assist members with any questions. Councillors Dorward, or as Councillor Driver, substituting again, and Wilson, please propose and second your motion, after which I'll invite contributions and questions.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm going to ask you to use your imagination again as to regards gender, height. And she's probably got a deeper voice than me, but that's a different matter altogether. Fellow members, the paper and the motion give a decent overview of Dr. Flora Murray's life and work and her significant contributions to women's suffrage, medical practice both in and out of the armed forces, and the LGBTQ+ culture and rights. But we need more than a paper and a motion to do her achievements any good in their entirety and justice. However, as an example and encompassing every achievement strand during World War I and facing discrimination as a woman, she, with her partner in life and work surgeon Louisa Garrett Anderson, overcame the prejudice and bigotry of a male-dominated medical profession, a male-dominated government and a male-dominated War Office, and were invited by the British government after a similarly successful operation in France to open a military hospital in the UK run almost entirely by women to treat men, using skills she honed at the Crichton Royal. It is significant that her achievements have been recognised nationally, i.e. her portrait is in the Bank of Scotland £100 note, but that she is still, despite being a local girl born in Dalton and working in the Crichton Royal Hospital, relatively unknown in our region. The dial has shifted in the right way recently, and the Labour Group would like to record our thanks to the museum and library staff in Dumfries and Galloway Council, and to the fantastic volunteer consultant DJ McDowell for the events marking Women's History Month and LGBTQ+ History Month, including excellent story trails at the Ewart Library and the Women of Dumfries Art, Suffrage, Temperance and War exhibition currently in Dumfries Museum. Amazing, but arguably that is not enough. Whilst these exemplary events have brought Dr Flora Murray back home, we in the Labour Group feel she absolutely deserves a permanent memorial. The term local hero has never been more fitting, and whilst we have been made aware that work is ongoing elsewhere, we are proposing this council submits a nomination as per Historic Environmental Scotland's commemorative plaque scheme for a memorial plaque to be placed either where Dr Murray worked locally, which was the Rutherford McGowan building at the Crichton campus, or at our home in Dalton. This will ensure Dr Murray is commemorated both as a significant citizen of Dumfries and Galloway and as a fantastic role model for all women in this region. And what a role model. She was a pioneering woman who overcame prejudice, misogyny, to live her life honestly, to contribute significantly to society, and to do all this with the women she loved. Council, I urge you to support this motion and ensure, working alongside others, Dr Flora Murray has a permanent memorial in her home region. Thank you, Convener. Remove the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Convener. It's just to add that the Dr Flora Murray features strongly in the successful exhibition in the Dumfries Museum, The Women of Dumfries Art, Suffrage, Temperance and War, which runs to January 2024, and having taken my own children to see it, I thoroughly recommend it. I thought it particularly important to take my two young daughters to highlight how things have changed for women, but how there are still barriers to overcome, and happy to second this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brodie.
Thanks, Leader. Flora Murray is a subject dear to my heart. I did extensive research in 2018 when the Devil's Poise Museum was commemorating the women getting the vote in 1918. So I think Archie's covered most of the points, but it'd be wrong to underestimate Flora Murray's contribution to the suffragette movement. She was the physician to Emmeline Pankhurst and other leading members of the suffragette movement. She had a campaign against the government practice of force-feeding women in prisons in London, which involved barbaric practice of stuffing their tubes right down into their stomach and force-feeding them, which caused long-term medical problems to them. And she was in the front line, not just in Endell Street in London. She with her partner, she ran two prisons in the front line in Paris and the Western Front, and also on the west coast of France when that became untenable. So her contribution to suffragettes and the vote is extensive. I know that at the present there is a bronze plaque in the church at Dalton, but it would be good to have an external sort of memorial, a plaque to commemorate her in her village of Dalton. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dougie Campbell.
Thanks, Convener. And again, just to fully support the motion, I knew nothing about Flora Murray until just a few weeks ago. My wife and I visited Dumfries Museum, and the curator talked us through the exhibition and the tributes to Flora Flora Murray, a real trailblazer and pioneer. And it just actually makes you wonder how many other people are out there that we should be recognising. I don't know how we would go about doing that, but certainly Flora Murray is well worth celebrating, going beyond recognising, but actually celebrating her life and her achievements. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Little.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you to Councillor Dorward for bringing this motion forward, and for Archie for delivering it with such eloquence. I recognise the spirit of all that's been said in the motion and believe it is correct and proper that Dumfries and Galloway Council recognises the life and achievements of this phenomenal local woman. And Councillor Dorward's right, she's virtually unknown to the region, which is not unsurprising because she was a woman. We've not championed our women enough, and sometimes not at all. There have been some amazing women from our region, and Councillor Dougie Campbell's right, there's lots of them as well as men, but there's a lot of women that have not been recognised, and their achievements have not come to the fore, and this is something we really need to dig down in. But we've had some amazing women from the region that have achieved highly in their field, making sometimes, and most definitely in the case of Dr. Flora Murray, groundbreaking contributions to our society. And they should be recognised, praised and celebrated. Therefore, I do fully support this motion being brought forward and support it in its entirety. But I wonder, the Crichton Trust I do know the Crichton Trust are progressing with some form of plaque, and they're looking into that. Is it possible for the council to work alongside it and to collaborate with them, or at least to touch base with them to see how far they are? Because I would hate to think that they were doing something, we were doing something, and it clashed and it caused any issues. So if there was a way for us to work with that.
Councillor Drybrough.
Absolutely, Chair. Why reinvent the wheel if something's already been done about it? And then, and if there's a sharing of costs here, for instance, on plaques, which I'm sure it wouldn't cost that much anyway, but that research and making sure we have the right place for Flora is the right thing to do. So absolutely, Lorna, I think if you maybe speak with Willem or somebody like that to see if there's something going on with that. I'm not sure what it is, but they are doing quite a lot of projects up there at the moment, so it might not just be about Flora, it might be others as well.
I think...
Can I come back in, sorry? No, there is definitely that going as well. There are other projects and stuff, but there's actually quite a lot of work that they're working along beside DJ McDowell regarding Flora, so I think there's a lot of things due to come ahead that would be some sort of permanent. But can I also, if Councillor Dorward or Councillor Bigger Dorward there would accept if I could add an extra recommendation, and I did speak with Councillor Dorward about this. This is not left field neither. We do speak as members. Just to add that for Dumfries and Galloway Council to continue to support those involved in raising the recognition and profile of Dr. Flora Murray in whatever way is required.
Yeah, I think Vlad's got a note of that. Are you happy with that, Councillor?
Yeah, happy with that, Chair.
Councillor John Campbell.
Thanks, Convener. Yes, I fully support the motion put forward with the additions, but I would suggest if the Crichton's already putting something up there, why don't we just put something in Dalton? And then that way we cover both sort of areas of importance.
Councillor Little.
Sorry, I just come in on that. I say that the Crichton Trust are looking into this. I don't think it's that far down. I think perhaps working together is the best idea rather than just leaving it. Because I do know that they're progressing with it, but I don't know how far down the level is. It may not be very far down. So.
Thank you. And I do think that what I was about to say earlier was, we are looking to progress it here. We've not came to a decision of where it's going to go and what's going to happen. It's a matter of progressing it. So I think we've got universal support for that as well. Thank you. Item 24, notice of motion again, application of council tax exemptions for properties affected by flooding. Report by Director Communities. Are we happy to remove delegation from Communities? Members are asked to consider the notice of motion proposed by Councillor Linda Dorward, seconded by Councillor Archie. Oh, this is going to be interesting. Seconded by Councillor Archie Driver. The notice of motion is attached as the appendix to the report. Lorna Campbell, Financial Wellbeing and Revenues Manager, is available on Teams to assist members with any questions. Councillors Dorward and Dryborough, who may be one and the same person, please propose and second your motion, after which I shall invite contributions and questions from other members.
Thank you very much, Convener. I'll obviously read the thing from Linda, and then I'll follow up with my one and give you the examples that I've actually had in this one. This motion may appear to address a relatively minor number of incidents, but we would suggest it is also laid to attempt to future-proof council tax legislation in the light of climate change and the increased detrimental effects it has on our region and its people. We in the Labour Group are aware that legislation covering council tax is UK-wide and have been informed that it does not allow for a great deal of local discretion regarding exemptions. This means that unfortunately householders forced to vacate their homes due to flooding are not deemed, in the interpretation of that legislation, exempt from paying council tax, despite having no control over the circumstances of their temporary absence. This is because the property is considered their sole or main residence. We are aware of individuals who have still not moved back into their homes after the unprecedented levels of flooding that hit this region in December 31st last year. D&G residents who are dealing with the expense, trauma and challenges of moving out of their property do not need the added state enforced burden of paying council tax. That is tax on the property they live in for a property that is temporarily uninhabitable through no fault of their own. It is notable that neither the UK or Scottish governments have met their climate change targets in this or recent years, and whilst flooding in D&G is not new, the severity and effects of it are increasing. Residents in D&G should not be penalised for these unprecedented events. If, as we are advised, discretion cannot be applied currently in the instances of flooding due to accepted legislative parameters and current case law, we in the Labour Group are moving that this Council liaises with other local authorities, a review of case law parameters and elicits assistance from Scottish Government to liaise with the UK Government to look to review and amend legislative parameters around council tax exemption. As a matter of urgency, the objective being to include a process that allows exemptions from council tax when a home requires to be vacated due to a natural disaster. We urge that full council support this motion. Chair, if I can add an example perhaps of where this has really hurt me as Armed Forces champion. In Kirkton, we had a former veteran who was suffering from PTSD and physical injuries as well. And as part of the flooding in Kirkton, he had to move out of his house. And because of all his equipment was in his house, he couldn't move it because it was contaminated with the flooding. Of course, he had to move out. He's still not back in his house, but his PTSD, his mental health has actually degraded since then. And obviously the physical support that he was having has been hard to get from the NHS because he had already had some of that support, but it was in his house and contaminated. His one big issue, of course, was I'm still having to pay my council tax. I'm not in my house. And as an ex-soldier, you can't see that. You know, when you're away on a ship or you're deployed and things like that, if you've got a house back home, you can get relief from council tax. But if you're in a home that's flooded, you cannot get relief from council tax. But you still can't use that house because of the damage that it's done and the contamination. So, Chair, I'm happy to second this, but there are a load of options and potentials that we can move forward and hope people will support the motion going forward.
Councillor Driver, you will need to get an actual seconder. You can't just put a different hat on.
Happy at second, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any comments or questions? Oh, Councillor, I don't know who was quick. It's a photo finish. Councillor Little.
Just really, yes for this. This affects mine and Linda's and Archie's ward. We're quite well aware of the situation. It's been something that's been quite frustrating for us because we have constituents that can't access any form of discretion to do with the council tax. So to be able to look at this is a real positive for the situation some of our constituents find themselves in. So absolutely 100% support this.
Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, so I think I think on one of the earlier items yesterday in part one of in the first half, we talked about the NDR, and that applies to a specific thing around what we do with council tax. But there is obviously in the actual ask, so there will be an element of what we're competent to do at the moment within legislation and what we might need to represent and lobby for in terms of the things we might need to do for that discretion. So obviously we want to get something back that says how could we do this? Can we do it just now? And what the limits for what we can do and what criteria would we apply? But I'd imagine that we'd expect a report back that would outline that. Totally happy to support that. I'm just wondering, Archie mentioned about natural disasters general, if you like, because obviously what if it's not flooding but somebody else has to move out of their house because of something out with their control, some kind of force majeure or whatever it might be. So presumably that would be implicit, or do we need to, would you extend to that as well?
I totally agree with the force majeure side of things here. It's not explicitly flooding, but if there is a circumstance in which somebody has to move out of their house for no reason of their own, and it's because of an event, then we need to look at that. And I know that there is legislation which, at the moment doesn't cover that. And I have to say, thank you to Lorna and her team, because she does a wonderful job in helping, certainly me with ex-forces guys and things like that. But I think in this case we need to look at any sort of natural disaster event.
Yeah, it could be just the wind blows your roof off, for example. Lorna, can you help us out with some of that?
Thanks, convener. I think, Councillor Thompson there's raised, the earlier report, and I think we just need to be clear there is a difference here. The earlier report yesterday talked about changes about empty properties and second homes, and it's quite what Archie's outlined as part of the presentation here. The issue for houses that are flooded or affected by force majeure is that they're still considered as occupied because it's a temporary absence. So if there's going to be some sort of representation to Scottish Government or National Government or other councils, it's making sure that we represent both those sides, because we're not talking about what the legislation is classing as still an occupied property, because it's a temporary absence with an intention to return. Therefore, that's why it's classed as a sole or main residence. So it's just that clarification in there that the other report was talking about a different circumstance as far as the consultation was concerned.
Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, convener, and thanks, and I can't be reminded of that enough, evidently. But I think it's helpful because sometimes it is easy to confuse these things and the legislation that surrounds them. But if you're happy, mover and seconder, to include just maybe it's explicit, so it's flooding and or other natural disasters. I think that's implicit anyway, but it was just to make it clear. Thank you.
Leader.
Yeah, thank you. I think the force majeure would be a change to secondary legislation, so that would have to be a lobbying position. I'm really surprised about this, and I have an absolute sympathy with the motion, and I'm very happy to back it. But unless the Act or any amendments to the Act have superseded what's currently in place, I was of the understanding that, I'll have to read this because it's legal blare, that there is provision within Section 13A of the Local Government Finance Act 1992 to grant council tax discounts on properties affected by flooding and allows local billing authorities flexibility, and it remains up to the local authority whether to use the power. So that's one part of the Local Government Finance Act. The second part is part of the council tax exempt dwellings of April 1997, where we have discretion to apply discounts or reductions to dwellings that are under repair, improved or reconstructed. So I actually think we have the flexibility to be doing this now. We are simply not using that power. Unless somebody would like to correct me.
Archie?
Sorry, Convener, but this is why Linda actually brought the motion, is because of the information that she was getting was very confusing, and she thought the same as yourself, Leader, that there is a potential within the local government acts that would allow us to have that set. But I believe she was advised differently, and this is why the motion has come here. So if there was a way of taking that forward and ensuring that is part of the report going forward, then that would be that would help no end.
just to come back, I think that would be the first step, because if we already have the powers, we don't need to bring a report, we just need to utilise them. And I think we should pick this up through Leaders Panel as a matter of urgency and get the answers we need. We're not allowing second and third speakers today.
Councillor Hislop.
Chair, it's with regard to the notice of motion and the last sentence in there. I'm just wondering if you could reference the flood of December 2022, because maybe it's the way I'm reading it, but the way I'm reading it, it means anything after December 2022 would be considered, but the event actually happened in December. It's just, if you could reference the flood, I think that's, if you'd be happy to accept that.
Thank. Even I can't remember that far back. Right, Councillor Little.
You're so kind to me, letting me come back in, convener, thank you. It was just in reference to Gail. I wanted to answer Gail's points. There is all that that in place, but it's like really odd circumstances. We have constituents that cannot remove their furniture because of the insurance assessors. They have to have it there. With the furniture's there, it's classed as still their full residence. They have to change all their bank details. They have to change all the stuff. There's so many things that have to be changed for it to be classed as not their full residence. Have to be changed to wherever they're temporary, all their personal details. And if they're going to be there a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year, they have to change, and it really makes things far more complicated for people who are already in a really high distressed situation. So although we have that there, I think this would cover, I think Linda's thing would cover these really unusual circumstances we find ourselves in just now for some constituents that don't fall into that.
Councillor Thompson.
I've passed on my second question to Councillor Campbell, John.
Is that just because you weren't going to get let back in? I'll make it clear though to the leader, it's me, it's me that decides who speaks. Councillor John Campbell.
It is standing orders that you can't get a second chance of coming back in. Yeah, the point I would like to raise reflects on the leader's statement about the acts that we already have. I would like to ask the officers, are we aware and can't you give us the official response? But I do take your point, Gail.
Vlad, you look like you're poised over your speak button.
Through you, convener. Just noting what's been said, and I think obviously Lorna Campbell's here as well. It might be worthwhile, obviously, in terms of the motion, it's quite clear for us to go away as officers anyways to look at that particular sections of the legislation and provide our own kind of legal interpretation through our legal team with Lorna's assistance through that, who's obviously got the knowledge within that particular area. So happy to take that away. I guess in terms of the motion, there are a few parts to it in terms of if DGC cannot apply discretion to provide exceptions, then in essence is to elicit that assistance from the Scottish Government. So similar to earlier prompts from the leader in terms of who should write out to the Scottish Government. I think we're probably making that clear that it's the leader to write out to the Scottish Government in terms of anything we establish here. But I suspect that what we'll need to do as officers is come back to you on these points, and I'd suggest that the right process for that is probably the leaders panel, and then thereafter we can write out depending on the outcome of that, if that's okay with members.
Yeah, I'm happy for officers to come back with the fullest information. However, what do we do now is probably more relevant.
Councillor,
what do we do at
Councillor
the moment?
Crothers, actually. There you go.
Just as the first time speaker, thanks very much. I'm just trying to grasp what's been said, and so I've got an understanding myself. It sounds like from what Gail, so there's been a really good motion moved and seconded. Gail said, listen, that we've actually got legislation here that we can comply with, but ultimately it depends on the interpretation that's been applied by our officers. It sounds like that to you. Just to make sure, is that correct? And if that's the case, can we as a full council say to our officers, this is the way you have to interpret this particular policy? No, so that's the point. I just wanted clarity in regards to that. So is that what will come back in, Vlad?
through you, convener. No, I think you've answered your question there. No, it's not for obviously members, because at this point in time we haven't given you our full interpretation of that. I think it's for officers to go away, do that piece of work through the leaders panel, obviously, and we can bear in mind this has been to full council, so we can circulate that to all members, and then thereafter take the actions that might be required to the Scottish Government through the leader potentially taking that forward.
Right, Vlad, so do you want to confirm exactly where we are with the motion, what we're actually proposing? Councillor Driver.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, I think the appropriate committee would be the Communities Committee, because that's where Lorna and that report's doing it.
Vlad, do you want to come in?
I'm in the hands of members on this ultimate shared decision as to where next. I'm suggesting certainly officers need to provide you with that interpretation and practical element of how we implement that, both just now and our legal view on that, and thereafter whether we take the steps that are suggested within the motion, which is to write to Scottish Government. So if it's going back to communities, that will delay the next steps. So it's just whether, in essence, we're agreeing through members that they'll go to the leaders panel and all the answers will be circulated to members. Thereafter, it will go to Scottish Government if that's what's determined as per the motion.
Thank you. I think we're all happy to agree that. So we'll move on to the next item.
I've had my hand up for some time, convener.
Oh, Andy, it's much better if you just put it in speak, because it's really difficult to monitor hands.
Right, okay, sorry about that. Just before we finish that off there, and I'm sorry to kind of put a statement in the works, but my understanding is we set the council tax before budget setting date and the conditions of the council tax, and that's full council only. So we would have to bring something back to full council to change this, rather than Communities Committee. That's all I was going to say. I'm not sure if Vlad agrees with that, but that's my understanding, because we know we always have that vote before we actually set the budget. We set the council tax first. It's a separate issue.
No, it is a separate issue, apparently. Vlad?
Thank you, convener. My understanding of the motion is that what we've been asked to do as officers is to come back with the legal interpretation of the criteria. It's not to change anything, and thereafter, if the criteria doesn't allow for what members are asking the question about, then ultimately to write to Scottish Government to address these matters. That's my understanding of the motion.
Thanks, Vlad. Okay, thank you. That's clear.
Thank you. So we'll now move on to minutes for approval. So Annan Common Good Fund Subcommittee, 17th of May 2023. Do we have a proposer?
Happy to move.
Second.
Annandale and Eskdale Area Committee, 24th of May.
Happy to move.
Second.
Castle Douglas Common Good Fund Subcommittee, 24th of May 2023.
I'm happy to second, but I don't see Ian or Paul in there to move.
We'll move that to the next meeting. Civic Government Licensing Panel, 11th of April 2023. Moved.
Seconded.
Civic Government Licence Panel, 23rd of May 2023.
Happy to move.
Happy to second it.
Civic Government Licensing Panel, 25th of May. Lynn, could you propose? And
Happy to move.
Councillor Denley, could you second?
Yep, second, Chair. Thank you.
Dumfries Common Good Fund Subcommittee, 7th of June.
Happy to move.
Councillor Hislop.
Happy to second.
Employment and Appeals Subcommittee, 20th of April 2023.
Move.
Second.
Employment and Appeals Subcommittee, 18th of May 2023.
Move.
Second.
Kirkcudbright Common Good Fund Subcommittee, 19th of April 2023.
Move. Seconded.
Local Review Body, 1st of February 2023.
Moved.
Second.
Local Review Body, 1st of June 2023.
Move.
Second. Lockerbie and Lochmaben Common Goods Fund Subcommittee, 6th of June 2023.
Happy to move.
Happy to second.
Nithsdale Area Committee, 10th of May 2023.
Happy to move.
Second.
Thank you. Planning applications. Committee, 31st of May 2023.
Moved.
Councillor Dennerley, can you help?
Yep, happy to second.
Stewardship Area Committee, 17th of May 2023. Councillor Dennerley, are you happy to move?
To move.
Yep,
happy to move.
And Councillor Young's happy to second.
Thank you, John. Sunrar Common Good Fund Subcommittee, 31st of March 2023.
Moved.
Second.
Wigton Area Committee, 3rd of May 2023.
Happy to move.
Second.
Thank you. Item 26, minutes for noting. Items 26A, 26N. We're happy to note those. Item 27, any other business deemed urgent by the Chairman due to the need for a decision. So I have one item of urgent, and it says urgent and exempt business here.
It's the next one.
Oh, it's the next one. It's the following the consultation with myself and the leader. The proper officer has agreed to move the next full council meeting, scheduled for Thursday the 28th September to Wednesday 4th October, to avoid a clash with the COSDA annual conference on 28th, 29th September. You should all have received calendar invites to reflect this change. We did try to get COSDA to change for us, but they weren't prepared to do it. Okay. So I have no further business. Thank you all for your patience.
Thanks, Chair.